Hi guys, welcome to my new video. This is the process for Fairy Jar. So in this, you'll see me transferring a sketch from regular copy paper onto watercolor paper. This is because the original sketch was done in a really small 5 by 7 sketchbook, a Pentalic sketchbook, and I love the sketchbook, but it is not good for watercolor. And so I took a picture of the sketch, I uploaded it to Procreate, and I kind of messed with the composition, and I was able to get a composition that I really liked. And after I got a composition I liked, I was able to print it off onto copy paper and then use this light pad to transfer it to watercolor paper. The watercolor paper I'm using is Arch's cold press. The reason I use cold press is because normally I like the texture of it, whereas hot press has no texture. It's very smooth paper, and that can be hard for even washes. And so that's why I like cold press. But in the end, I didn't like it because the colored pencils were just not giving me the texture, this clean line art texture that I wanted, and gave it more of a gritty texture that really kind of bugged me in the end and made me feel like I lost a lot of detail for the fairy. And so to resolve that issue, I'm trying a new watercolor paper, and I'm going to be using inks to line art this next piece coming up. And the thing with it is, we'll see if I like the paper. I might go back to Arches. I might try a new kind of watercolor paper I have, and we'll see what happens. So I did transfer this piece twice, and the reason is because I actually want your guys' input if I should, because I painted one of them in watercolor and I was thinking about painting the other in just drawing inks, and so that's what I want your input on. So please comment below if I should repaint it in inks instead of watercolor. And it would be a cool experiment to see the difference between the watercolor and how vibrant those colors are versus the drawing inks, and the kind of techniques that I would have to learn, or the challenges I would run into that are different between inks and watercolors. So yeah, that's an idea. So please comment below if you would like me to repaint this specific piece with drawing inks. So on the side, I did have references for the pose and the face. I forgot to save all the references. I don't know where they went, but here is one. And so you're gonna see more references come up that I used, and I'm actually quite proud of myself. This is an improvement from my last videos where I didn't have any references or palettes that I used to show you guys, so I'm doing a little bit better. And so the hair, the dress, the face were all from imagination, but certain body parts I needed references, like the hands and the feet, because those are really difficult to imagine. And so I did use references for those, but the rest of it came out of imagination. I did use some reference for the flower. And again, I don't know where that reference went. I don't know if it was like a stock photo from Google, like a simple Google search. But I did use references, and I can prove it this time. I'm obviously getting better at editing these videos, so hopefully in the future I can have more of the references I used, where I got them from, things like that. Most of the references are either from Pinterest or from Google, and they're just stock photos or like pieces of photos that I just Googled. And so that's normally where I get it from. And with references, you actually have to piece some things together to get it exactly right if you don't want to photo yourself. Because you can always get the right photo when you photograph yourself in the pose that you want. But I am a bit camera shy when it comes to things like this. I feel really awkward taking pictures of myself in the poses that I need, so I tend to Frankenstein the pose, is what I like to call it. And yeah, so this is the first piece of my fairy series, my fairy fall series. And so let me see, how do I phrase this? So this is the first piece. This was the first idea for the fairy fall, and this is kind of what got me going and inspired to do the rest of the series. And the reason I chose to do the series was because I wanted to challenge myself to make a coherent series or set of paintings that all went together and could be used in a portfolio to prove that I do have skill and that I can keep going with an idea. And so, as you saw, I had color palettes up, and these color palettes were inspired by fall and really soft colors. I may not always get the colors right, but at least I have the feeling that comes from those color palettes. And again, with that's how to make things very coherent, is to bring things over, have the same ideas, and make sure that you're trying to keep like the same vibes. That's the best way I can explain it. Obviously there's other ways to make a series of paintings coherent, like same subject with different color palettes, or like everything's all the same landscape, or there's different ways to do it, and this is how I'm doing it. And the color palettes really inspired me. I really like the soft oranges, and I love fall and the feeling of fall. Like, it's cool and it's fresh, and I do like the rain. And so there's rain and there's some gloom, but it's not always gloomy because of the bright colors of the leaves, bright oranges and soft oranges and yellows, and what I really liked from the color palettes is they added some blues in there, which helped contrast the pinks and the like really warm colors. And so that pop is something I really like, and not because that blue is my favorite color, but because I like that pop, that one thing that stands out. And so I'm gonna try and keep that color palette throughout all of these pieces. And if not, I'm going to try and keep the soft orange and soft reds and yellows, and then bring a crazy pop of random colors somewhere. And yeah, so here you can see that I have a reference photo for the color. I really wanted the color of the flower to be this orange, and the other thing is this may be the reference photo for the flower, but it was mainly about the color, like having a light orange in the back and then some yellow on the tips. I wanted yellow, so that's not following the reference, but then having a darker center. So yeah. And then with the greens, because I needed greens in here, most of my pieces will have a lot of green in it, and so I chose a really warm green. So it's a sap green, and then I had like a blue green, and added some yellow to it to give it more of a warm tone, to kind of match the oranges and the yellows that I was putting into this piece. I also thought that the composition of this piece was fun. I like the jar. I was imagining, like, the old amber glass, and how like it was old style and amber looking, and that kind of got me on in this direction. And I was like, well, what if a fairy made it her home, or someone caught a fairy and put her in this jar with a twig? Don't know how the twig got into the jar, because it doesn't seem physically possible with some grass and whatever. Or maybe because it's old glass, it looks bigger than what it really is on the inside. I just thought it was a fun concept, and that's why I decided to run with it and then create an entire concept idea from it, which I think is amazing, that I was able to be inspired by something that I came up with in my own brain. And like I said, you could probably tell I'm more excited about this, and I actually edited the video quite fast. In fact, this painting only took me 3.5 hours to do, instead of forever. Like sometimes paintings will take me a month or two because I'm just not that inspired about it. This one didn't take me very long. It wasn't a chore to paint it. It was quite fun, and I enjoyed it. And I guess enjoying it is really important. It helps you get it done. I mean, this video is going out way sooner than I normally put videos out, and like I said, I'm quite excited about the series, and to see where it goes, and to see what I learn, and to see how I grow as an artist, and maybe my style changes, maybe it doesn't. I'm just super excited about this idea. And so with that, I have started the next painting. I'm not gonna say how far along I am because I don't know how long a piece takes until I feel it's finished. And that's how long a piece takes. It just, I paint until I feel like it's finished, or sometimes I feel like I'm overworking things. Although I haven't really felt that except for when I started doing the colored pencil portion of this piece, because when I started the colored pencils, I felt like, oh man, I'm wrecking this thing, and it didn't. Certain parts got better, but then a lot of other parts just got muddled, and I didn't like that. And so with this next one, hopefully I will reach a point with the inks that I'm like, okay, this is good. I like this. I'm not going to touch it anymore. I'm just going to leave it alone. And usually when you get to a point where you're like, this is good, I like this, that's when you should just walk away. Just leave it alone and maybe come back later to see if you needed to add something, or if you're still like, ah, it's good, then it's good. Just walk away, don't mess with it anymore, and move on to the next project. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. And I also have some other craft projects that I'm doing, and I've been kind of videotaping some of that, and some of it I haven't. We'll see if I end up video editing it and putting it on here on YouTube or Patreon, whichever one you're on watching this. So we'll see. That's gonna be a little while just because I'm learning and I want to make sure I do it correctly and don't get distracted or have pressure of people watching me. So yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, so the mixing palette that I have on the bottom right corner is full of paints that I mixed from all the colors that I have laid out here that you can see, and some of them are off screen, but generally they're just watercolors that I mixed together to get a color that I really wanted. Some of them I use, some of them I don't. I tend to not clean my palettes because I want to be able to reuse the paints as much as possible. The only time I will clean them, like when you saw at the beginning of this video, is I knew I was not gonna use that teal color and there wasn't much of it left. So I didn't feel bad about wiping it away because yes, it was a significant amount if you really think about it, but it wasn't terribly significant. I also use the palettes to have colors there to actually water them down so that you can get that light wash in the beginning. Like you can see, I put down a base wash for all the places that I'm painting, and then I go back in, like right now, to add shading or other colors or yeah, things like that. And that's why I use those palette parts. I need to get more so I can have multiples and be able to water down the colors even more so I can have even lighter washes, because the lighter your wash, the easier it is to layer, the easier it is to build on colors and get richer, more vibrant, darker colors that you want. Here I'm using a reference of an insect wing. They don't end up very good in the end with the colored pencils, and I should have pulled up this reference when I did it with the colored pencils. I did my best. I'm gonna do better next time, and that's all I can say. I think also next time I'm gonna add some metallic washes on the wings to give it kind of a shimmery effect. And then, as you can see here, I decided to change the color of the dress from what I had originally had it as and put yellow instead. And I thought that was a good choice. In the end, that was a better choice than what I had originally planned for, because I had planned for, I think, a pink, and I think that would have made her kind of hide in the flower instead of stand out. So putting her in the yellow kind of put her as the focal point instead of being hidden by the flower and the flower colors. Because if I had done pink, then she would have definitely blended in with the peachy color of the flower. And so now that she's yellow, she's like, oh, the center of a flower anyways. And that was, so even though I tried to plan out colors and I thought about them and I looked at them, even with planning, it's okay to change your idea if in the moment you just feel like something doesn't feel right. And sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it works. This is one where it did work, and I think the reason it worked is because I did have all the colors out that I was planning on using, and it helped me to see, after I had painted the flower, it helped me see like, oh yeah, I definitely kind of need to change this a little bit. And I'm glad I did. I'm really proud of the texture that I put on this branch in the jar with her. I'm so proud of it. In person, it looks amazing too, if not better. And I'm also glad about the texture of the leaves and the grass that's in the jar with her as well. I was kind of upset for a second, and then you'll see what I do. I just kind of blast it a little bit, and that kind of pushes back the texture, I guess, because I didn't like how all the individual grass was looking. And so I was trying to think of how when you start learning to draw landscape or trees, they tell you to only worry about sections and only worry about shading certain shapes and sections, and it ends up looking like a tree when you do that. So with that in mind, I was trying to do a similar idea with the grass, and the idea that less is more. Like if I break the grass down into shapes, it's going to give it more of a fluffy, grassy feel. Like a kid just shoved grass in a bottle and shook it around so that it laid on the bottom, or like the Easter baskets. I know it's such a weird analogy or example, and how like the grass lays in those. So I was trying to think about that, and I think that helped, and it made me really happy in the end. Like, I'm actually super proud of this piece and what I was able to accomplish. So again, after laying down the base, adding some shadows, I do go back in to try and darken those shadows, or here I'm trying to finish off the fairy, because I do jump around in a piece, especially working with watercolor, because you have to wait until certain areas are dry before going back, because you don't want the colors to bleed into each other, unless that's what you're going for. Like when I did the yellow on the tips, the other pieces of those petals were still wet, but I was trying to have the yellow blend in with that peach color. But with the hair, I don't want the hair blending in with the wings and things like that. That's why when you watch artists, sometimes they jump around, and it's actually a good thing, because it gives you a break and a time to be able to step away from that spot, especially if you're getting frustrated about that area of a piece. It helps you stand back, look at it later with new eyes, and then if you've worked on a different piece, then you're able to stand back entirely and be able to see how that one spot interacts with the other spot. Like I said, I would have probably messed up this piece had I kept her dress pink, but because I did the flower and then came back to the dress, I was like, oh, executive decision, yellow for the dress. So it really does help to jump around, not only because the watercolor needs to dry, but because it helps you be able to see the piece as a whole instead of just one thing versus another thing. And that's kind of a really interesting analogy for life. Sometimes you just gotta take a step back and look at everything you're working on, not just the one thing. But yeah, so again, I'm super excited about this piece and the series. And here is where I start working on the jar. And this was a little bit difficult. I was a little bit worried about it, because what I do is I paint in the background, and then I paint a wash over the entire piece with this color to give it a look as if she is in the jar. And the reason I worried about putting the whole wash across the entire thing is because of the same reason I talked about jumping around with watercolor. It's because some colors can run. I did have a little bit of that, but it was actually quite minimal compared to what it could have been. And I think it really helps the piece feel really cohesive, because everything had a tinge of that ambery orange tan color. And yeah, it really brought it together, really helped the whole thing feel more finished. I do obviously go back in a little bit with the colored pencils to darken up some places that I feel like I couldn't get dark enough with the watercolor, because there's only so much that watercolor can do. Yeah. All my art professors thought I was crazy because I couldn't get the depth that they thought I should get it with watercolor. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna use watercolor and color pencils because that's what I like. And I like the softer, less messy or dangerous art supplies. Like, I did not want to mess with oils because I didn't want to have to worry about painting with gloves, because I am a very textile person. Like, I do rely a lot on the feel of how a brush feels or how paint feels, and I feel like with the glove on, it would ruin that for me. But if you like oils, go for it. I personally don't want to have to worry about the health hazards from the pigments or the acetone, the fumes, things like that. So yeah, here I am going in with the wash over everything, and this is where like I said, I'm starting to feel like, yes, this is getting to the point where it's getting done. I add a layer to the back to make it feel like, oh, glass on glass. It's going to be a little bit darker, things like that. So yeah, we're getting to the end of this video. I do want to say, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please comment on whether or not I should do the other one in drawing inks, if that would be any different. And then also comment below if you want me to draw a fairy in a different activity, and what activity that is. Like, what would you like to see a fairy doing? And I do want to thank those that have subscribed. I really appreciate it. And I really do love painting, and I'm glad you guys are here for it. Anyways, thank you. Bye.